So I'm excited about this because I feel like this is such a great way for everybody to kind of like get an inside look into not just your life, but the life of the church.
Yeah.
And just there's just so many moving parts that I feel like not a lot of people get to see on Sunday. And then there's people that aren't even in our area that are going to be able to listen to this and kind of ingest this, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah. It'll be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's such a pressure on Sundays that I feel at times to like say everything perfectly, you know, and I'm, as you will see, not really the case. So.
Well, and perfect is one of those things that I feel like the world has kind of pushed on us.
Yeah.
Social media, you know, TV, filters, all the things. There's voice auto-tune. There's all these things. Dealing with that as a pastor, I mean, on 10, you're in the pulpit, literally thinking that you have to, you know, you don't have room for error.
Right.
That's got to be a lot of pressure on you.
Something stupid from a stage, man. It can bite you quick.
When you go into a Sunday, is that something that's on the forefront of your mind? Like, are you always nervous?
So. Yeah. I mean, I think when I write, like anytime I'm writing content or getting ready to prepare, I mean, my stomach's definitely turning. Not just because of that, but when I write, I mean, I probably write with 12 people in the room. And what I mean by that is that I have all kinds of different people in my head. You know, like you have the critic. I have my wife, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
It's like I want to make sure that what I'm saying is consistent with how I live, at least like for the most part. Like I don't want to get off stage and her be like, yeah, dog, that was a lie. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't do that ever. But yeah, I definitely hear people like on social and two, I think the challenge really is that like you also realize that things like this or social media or whatever, they can become a strategy for growth and to reach people and all that stuff too. And so I don't ever want to just preach sound bites. You know what I mean? Because like I can phrase words real well. That's like what I do.
I mean, you do sometimes. But
come on. Yeah. But like, I don't want to just do it for the Instagram reel or the clip, you know, and I think that's a challenge now that like I know pastors face of like, how do I say this in a way that's authentic and real to me, but also understand that there's somebody watching on the other side of the screen that you are talking to and like figuring out how to do that for both people in the room, but then make it real for people that are not in the room too. So yeah, I think all of that, man, is a challenge. And like, you know, I mean, dude, I will go to the bathroom 4 times before I go preach. You know what I'm saying? Like for real.
Those nervousness.
For real. Oh man. Like it's real. And so I think it's a fight we all fight, but it's a challenge. That's
so
sure.
I want to go back to something you just said about your wife.
Okay.
About Jess.
Yep.
You coming off stage and being like, yo, we were in a fight last night. That's not how it went. Stuff like that. Is that something that you've ever had to like specifically deal with?
Oh man, yeah, absolutely. I try to not address anything that like, so like I try to be real transparent from stage. It has to be pretty much at least a week or 2 removed. And if it's that soon, I'm like, hey babe, can I talk about this? You know, or like or like I'll straight tell her like, hey, listen, I'm gonna share some thoughts that listen, I know I haven't done, but God's put on my heart I need to start doing. Are you good with me with this? You know, and then sometimes like, but there hasn't really been a whole lot of moments like that where she's like, that's fake to who you are.
Yeah.
She knows I'm not perfect. Lord knows that. And she lives with me in that. So she's pretty supportive, but she'll correct me. Like Holy Spirit sounds a lot like Jessica Woodard, you know, to me a lot of the time. So
wives are always great.
Yeah. Oh my Lord. Yeah. She has a gift of discernment for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's been times where, you know, with what I'm preaching weekly, that very thing I'm talking about will try to come up. You know what I'm saying? So there's a fly in here.
I know. She's fly don't look at me.
That's right.
I belong to somebody.
That's right. That's right. So, you know, I think that like there's been times where, so for instance, like I preached on bitterness, you know, and like that literal week, I have like someone who is like a friend of mine, but not a friend of mine, and like took a stab at me or whatever. And like, I'm dealing with literal bitterness that week as I'm about to go preach on bitterness. Same thing happens like, dude, relationship series.
Yeah. It's always,
they're my favorite. Like it's my favorite to talk about that kind of stuff. But like, man, I feel under attack every single time. I'm like, all right, I'm going to give some tips about how to be a good husband. And that week I'm like, I'm the suckiest husband alive. And she's like, are you really going to talk about that this week? Or like we did a message on a fighting fair. And like, we have some fighting rules in our relationships. Like, hey, we don't cross boundaries on this. You know, we don't, literally, I broke like 4 or 5 of them like 2 days before.
But
and it's like, she's like, yep, he's definitely not perfect. You know,
I think that's the beauty of this podcast and getting these behind the scenes moments because you're human.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know that from like an outside looking in, I know that there are like, I've got family members that step away from church because they're like, these people are put on a platform and a pedestal and they're not allowed to be human because they're telling me about Jesus, which
Right.
I think is complete opposite. And I know that you are very open and honest about struggles that you've had in the past and things like that. And the fact that you have these moments where like you're going to fail, you're not always going to be perfect. And I think that's so important for people to realize and understand that just because you're on stage doesn't mean that you're perfect. I mean, nobody's perfect, right? Jesus is the only one.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
It's good.
So doing this this podcast, Inside Renovation, I know you've been talking about it for a long time now. When did this start boiling in your heart? When did God kind of start pulling on the strings for you?
I think it has a lot to do with what we're talking about already, because there's a perception that people have of everybody, right? And especially I feel this pressure as a pastor, but I also know that like the people I'm talking to, there's this feeling of like coming to church and having to put on face and act and pretend like everything's good. And I deal with a lot of that, like from a child, you know, just like my childhood coming in, it's like, man, church is for perfect people, or you got to act like everything's good. And it's the same person that's like greeting you at the door is beating their wife behind the scene, you know, or whatever it is. And so I think for me, the tendency in culture right now is like we just celebrate so much about people, of what we see on the gram and all of that kind of stuff, that I think there's a deeper work. And for me, it's like I really want to talk about what's going on the inside. And even in my own life, like I don't want it to just be, man, like I'm on this pedestal and perceived as this like guy who's got it all together, because I don't.
Yeah.
And there's some things that wrestling on the inside of me that I got to figure out. And I think people need to figure out too. And so for me, it's like, man, let's talk about what does it look like for us to be transformed inside, not just outside.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, scripture will tell you like man looks at the outward appearance, God looks at the heart. So for me, it's like, I want to figure out how do we do that? And how do we talk about things and go, man, there's a deeper issue here than maybe what everybody sees on the surface. And we're quick to label people, you know, we're quick to say things that we see one time from somebody like, oh, they're just that way. And you have no idea why that's even there, you know, and what's even causing that and what lie they're believing or where that came from. And so we just write people off. And so for me, I think I want people to understand, I really do. I think people, I think they want to do good. I think they just do what they know, you know, and they don't know what they don't know. And so I think people really do like, we're evil or whatever. But at the same time, I think people are really trying to do good in the world. I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning going, I want to suck as a human today.
Yeah.
I want to treat my wife like crap today. I don't think anybody wakes up that way, but we do it. And we do stuff that we regret doing, but there's some things on the inside I want to talk about and discuss on this podcast that maybe just don't have the time to unpack all that in a 35 to 40 minute sermon. That's if I'm going on time.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
45-minute sermon, whatever, you know. But I just don't have time to get into all of that, because I mean that itself is a lot to talk about, a lot to take on. And so that's what I hope this podcast can do, is just give people a space to go, you know what, like I don't have it all together. I'm a parent, you know, I'm single, I'm trying to figure out marriage, whatever it may be. And a lot of times there's just no one to really like speak into those things. And sermons are beneficial. I think a lot of life change happens off of Sunday.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, and I want to make sure we engage that space too.
Well, and let's go kind of back in a circle and talk about you and where you're at in life. Because for those who might not know who you are, you've got a beautiful wife.
Yeah, I do. That's
and
fact.
She's pretty,
league.
okay?
Out of my league.
You outkicked your coverage for sure.
Yeah, especially looking back. Like, I feel like I look a little better now, like, you know, but like back in the day, if you saw what I wore, and like my hair, she was making fun of my hair literally like 2 days ago.
You know what? I think it's so funny because I feel like going back to anybody who's in a relationship, the female is always superior, and it's just like the guy has the glow up. The guy's like, all right, I
can come on, I'll take it though. We slowly catch up, playing the long game, you know. She's like, I tell people all the time, don't marry for potential. She 100% married for potential. Like, you are a loser and an idiot, but I think I see something in you. You know what I mean? It's so like she rolled the dice a little bit.
Something nice about yourself. Okay. Because you just said a lot of mean things about yourself.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Isn't it sad how long it takes you to say something nice about yourself? Yeah. I always do this with people, and it always freaks them out. They're like, wait a second.
You do that to me. Yeah.
Put me on the spot.
I think I genuinely care about people.
Yeah.
I really do. I don't always come off like that. I come off sometimes like overly confident at times towards people or whatever, but I think I genuinely do care about people and where they're at and helping them move forward in life. And I think there's things that, for me, I'm a 3-wing toot, which we can talk about the Enneagram, that stuff eventually, but there's a real part of me. I'm a performer, but then there's also this part of me that I really do care about people and what they think and what they're going through. And I have the tendency to like, not just fix the problem, but carry it with them. And there's a burden I carry for people. Yeah. I think that makes it challenging, but also I think that would probably be a strength in who I am.
It 100% is a strength. I'm also a three-wing too. So
That's
yeah.
Let's go.
Well,
Come on. All right, it's good.
It's like,
I didn't know that.
You know, you genuinely do care about people. And Andrew will tell me all the time, Andrew, my husband, he's like, this is not your weight and you're carrying it for them. And it's such a hard thing to get rid of because you genuinely, you do care. You care so much about it. And it's just like, it is a strength. I don't find that a weakness. I think that's just something that as a leader in a church, especially, it's one of those things that you caring for that extra, you know, what, 60% or whatever it is, like it's immeasurable.
Yeah, there's a balance to it. But it's challenging, you know, especially when you get to know people and you know their stories. And then when you're talking from a platform, you're not just talking to like blank faces.
Right.
It's like, I know what I'm saying right now is like talking to you, but then to do that in care and love and not in a manipulative way, at least for them perceiving it that way, is important to me. So anyway,
we did get off topic. We're talking about your beautiful wife, Jess.
My beautiful wife, Jess.
And then your kids. Listen, by the time this comes out, you're gonna have another boy.
Yes.
How are you feeling about life right now?
I don't know. It's gonna be a big change. So we have, when this comes out, we have he'll be 5, 3, and then we'll have a newborn. So we have Tatum and Jet born on the same day, 2 years apart.
That's
literally Jet came 6 weeks early. Wife's water broke after the birthday party. Literally crashed his birthday party. So we have born on the same day, July 13th. I don't know if it's going to happen this time or not. We'll find out.
Yeah.
But there's a high potential that this third son could also be born on July 13th. So 3 boys in July. I'm nervous about it. I think I'm nervous about our routine because like we finally felt like we got into a routine and that's hard to do.
Kids are sleeping through the night and you're about to have a newborn.
We got Jet potty trained. I'm like, okay, like we don't feel like a complete failure as parents. We're like, okay, we're kind of getting this for now. And then now it's like, what are we going to do on like every day, but what are we going to do on a Sunday morning when like I'm getting up to prep at 5 a.m. And Jessica's got a newborn and 2 toddlers who don't listen worth a crap half the time. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are we going to do with that? You know, like, how does that work? Do I bring them to church with me for 6 hours, you know, that day? So, but man, they're absolutely the joy of my life. I love being a dad more than I love being a pastor or anything else. You know, I think when somebody asked me the other day, like, what did you dream of? I was on this trip in Montana and they were like, what did you dream of that maybe it died or maybe you're living in right now? And the kind of guys went around and a lot of them had to do with ministry. And I think for me, I love what we're getting to do in church and what God's doing right now in our church. But for me, I guess part of living the dream in my life right now is like I always dreamed about being a dad and having boys. I would love a girl.
Yeah.
Everybody asks if we're done. I don't know. Maybe not. If it was a girl and I knew it, we would definitely not be done.
Yeah.
Like we would start trying immediately to get a girl as soon as that was humanly possible. But with another boy, we'll see. But I think right now, man, for me, I'm loving life because I'm getting to spend a lot of time with my boys, and they're just at a fun age.
Mm-hmm.
They're hard, but they're also like they're little sponges, and they take up everything you say and do, and that's cool for me right now.
Do you ever feel the pressure as a dad, but also as a pastor, to be that perfect person that your kids look up to?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, my kids are funny, especially Tatum, because he's really, he's a really smart kid and he remembers everything. Like he will tell you about an event that happened when he was 2. And I'm like, bro, you couldn't even talk yet. And he just like, he can pull up everything. So him more than Jet, like Jet just copies everything Tatum does, but Tatum watches everything I do. Mm-hmm. And so it's funny because I do feel the pressure, but I think I've kind of let go of it being perfect because I've already made so many mistakes already. So I'm like, oh crap, it's like, stop yelling while they're, you're yelling at your kid while you tell them to stop yelling. So that's I think I've let go of the pressure to be perfect, but I also just know they're watching everything I do. Like literally Tatum, he baptizes his toys and he baptizes me about every weekend. He calls it bath time tisms. They baptizes his brother. He baptizes his stuffed animals. So it's just like, it's like, say you're a PK without saying you're a PK. Like that's him, but it's like, he'll also pick up on my bad habits. You know what I'm saying? So I have to really watch what I say and how I react to things.
Yeah.
Like I may have let a couple words slip and he knows how to use those words in context. When he drops something, he knows what we say when we accidentally drop something and he'll say it properly.
And you're like, am I proud of you for using it correctly or am I mad at you?
Yeah, it's like, please don't say that at church. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, I also don't want him to like feel like he has to be 2 different people, and so Yeah, it's just, anyway.
And I think there's a lot of these like practical real life moments that you envision being on this podcast and like helping other people through in their different, journeys of life. Yeah. What other, real life practical, topics or things do you envision other people, getting a word from or discernment, anything from on this podcast?
I mean, parenting's obviously one of them. I can only speak to the little experience I have, and who knows if I'm doing it right. So I think one of the things, right? I think one of the things to realize is just the uniqueness in every situation, in every relationship. And so beyond that, just like for people who are in a season of singleness right now, or maybe they want to be single, whatever the situation is there, like, man, I remember what that was like and some of the dumb mistakes I made in speaking into like such an amazing season where you have time to really focus in on the things that matter and matter to you and pursue after some dreams and travel and like stuff I'm glad I did. And then some of the stuff I wish I would have done. And so some of that's like just life experience, but also I think there's some things that even in culture of what our time and energy and money goes to that I'd love to speak to in that. And I think also just the parenting part, but really, man, right now for me, marriage is so important.
Yeah.
And I think you see, especially in the phase of life I'm in, where it's so easy to get consumed by your job and your work and consumed with your kids, and you lose sight of like the spouse relationship, know, and like what it looks like to still date my wife and still be a good husband and how to focus on her. And I think that's what my kids need more than anything. So I think talking a little bit about the relationship there, but I'll tell you something else that's been a real challenge that I've seen a lot of people in my phase of life and in our church and even outside the church. And it's almost like a buzzword. So I don't want to talk about it because it's a buzzword, but I've had real experiences with it in my own life is just mental health in general.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of moments over the past year, especially since COVID, for me, starting a church, starting a business, whatever you want to say, man, it brings a lot of doubt and brings a lot of dark and lonely moments where, there's a lot of anxiety attached to that. And then there's also when you know that there's hundreds or thousands of people watching, to not get maybe the feedback you hoped or stuff you've seen. I think we all deal with that, and feeling rejected, feeling isolated, lonely, and even just in those moments too of just dealing with like depression and like what does it look like to work through some of that? But then also like, man, that's a reality that a lot of us deal with, and so how do we walk through that kind of stuff? So that would be a couple of things I think I want to talk about. And we could talk about church life and stuff like that too, because there's a lot of leadership things I would love to kind of get into of just what does it look like for you to lead in the business world, or what does it look like for you to lead where you're at, lead with your family? So, yeah.
When that fear and doubt creeps in, I know this is kind of just like an intro podcast, but I'm going to go there for you. I'm going to go there.
Let's do it.
Has there ever been a moment in your, career of a pastor that you're like, this isn't for me? I can't do this.
100%. Yeah. Even before I was pastoring here, I mean, I had considered quitting ministry multiple times. In fact, I had a season where I walked away for different reasons, but where I was just like, I don't know if I want all of that. So church hurt was a part of that. I think unmet expectation was a part of that, where I had in mind and felt like I was told certain things as far as my career path. I hate even calling it that, but
yeah, I mean, it is.
Yeah. And when you have those unmet expectations, man, it hurts and it's painful, and you see the brokenness in people, right? And you see just that, man, the church isn't perfect and it does make mistakes and people make mistakes, and you have the organization as a church, but then you got the people that make it up. And so there was a season of that for sure. And then I think during COVID, it was challenging. It really was. And part of it had to do with just, you don't know if what you're doing is even making a difference and effective. It was so hard to measure stuff during that time. And we were 4.5 months old as a church, and just like, I don't even know, that's a thing. Mm-hmm. And then when you see people and opportunity come up around you to go, hey, I'm making nothing.
Right.
Just from a human standpoint, like, I'm making nothing. Like our first couple of years, I raised my own money for my own salary.
Yeah.
And so when you do that, it's like, it's limited resource for a season for sure. And I think when it's like, man, I'm watching people who become realtors in freaking 6 months.
Yeah.
And boom, they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm like, I could probably sell some houses. I'm pretty good at talking to people.
Right. You're
so it's like,
take this test real quick.
I think I could do that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But I don't think it ever became a real consideration, just because at that point, my wife and I, obviously we went all in. But I think there's just moments, not so much where I would walk away completely, but where I wonder, will I run out of stuff to say? I wonder if I guess in those low moments, you wonder if it'll always feel that way.
Yeah.
You know, where you're struggling with something and you're like, will this ever get better?
I feel like in our Bible study, we recently talked about that, about how like when you're in the thick of something, you're like this is all you can see. You can't see anything around you. So it feels like it's not going to get better.
Yeah. And it can be isolating, you know, and I think part of, you know, one of the things I was talking about with a couple of my friends is like, we think about accountability or like friend groups being this space where you can open up and be vulnerable about your struggles, which is so important. And we need that. I think in my space, a lot of times it's even more challenging to open up about your successes.
Yeah.
Like you asked me, like, so tell me something good about yourself. We're not good at doing that.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is like this fear of, if I share my wins with you, it's going to come off, you know, braggadocious and cocky or whatever. And so we just don't share them at all. And so we just become self-consumed with all of our flaws and our failures, that there isn't a safe space to be like, hey, yo, I'm killing it at this. You know what I'm saying? About winning a little, I'm this. You know, but it's like, I'm doing good at this, and having the space to say it, and somebody not be so self-consumed that they could actually celebrate you.
Yeah.
And I think right now in my phase of life, and what I look for in like close friends is people who I can share both with.
Yeah.
And that they just know me well enough to know, like, you know what, like he's not saying this because he thinks he's got it all together, but he needs a space to go, hey, and I'm actually doing well.
Yeah.
And not always feel like I have to just go there in this really deep, dark moment, but go, no, life is good right now. And man, I did kill it this Sunday. I crushed it. I gave a good sermon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you should be able to.
But there's just not space for that.
Right.
Like, it's just hard to do. And so I think both are equally important, and in the balance between the two. So, yeah.
But I think this is a good moment to kind of talk about the message, or like the invitation of somebody listening or watching right now. What would you say if they want to invite someone, or the invitation for somebody who is looking like, oh, what's this podcast about? Why should I keep watching? Your invitation to kind of those people, and what you would say to them that are watching right now.
One word comes to mind when you ask me that, and I think it's authenticity. I think that I feel, and a lot of us feel, the tremendous pressure to perform. And what I want anyone and everybody who's going to watch this or hear any of these sound bites or whatever, man, I want them to know that there's a space where they can have questions, they can have doubts, they can be angry. They don't have to have it all together. And that doesn't mean that, man, that something's deeply wrong with them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I just want people to go, you know what, like, we're going to talk about some things that I hope are helpful and practical, and go like, hey, how do we do this thing together? But I also just want people to have a space where it's like, man, this is a real conversation about real life things that we all can relate to, we all can talk about. So that's what I would really want to invite people in, like inviting people into something that is authentic, but also is pointing them to understand that for me and where I'm at, it's like, man, I want to point people back to Jesus and help them see that it's not just about this persona or religion or whatever, that you have to pretend to be something that you're not, but that, man, God loves you for who you are. And he wants to meet you where you are, but he doesn't want to leave you where you are.
Yeah.
You know, and I just, man, I want to help people move forward.
Yeah.
You know, and so that would be it. I think that's the message.
Well, you did it. Inside Renovation, episode 1, you crushed it. So excited about this. Y'all got to come back for episode number 2.